What if I told you the wars you see in the Middle East today didn't really start with bombs or armies, but with a few lines drawn on a map over a century ago? And here's the part most people don't realize: those same decisions are still shaping conflicts today. But it gets even crazier. These wars aren't just happening far away. They're quietly affecting your gas prices, your economy, and your future. So let's start with number 7. Number 7 begins with something that sounds almost unbelievable, yet it is completely true. Many of the modern borders in the Middle East were not created by the people who actually lived there. After World War I, the Ottoman Empire collapsed, leaving a massive region without clear control. This could have been a moment for local populations to shape their own nations, but instead, European powers stepped in. Britain and France divided the region through the Sykes-Picot Agreement, drawing borders based on political interests rather than cultural realities. And this is where things begin to fracture. The decisions were made quickly, but their consequences would last for generations. The problem was not just the borders themselves, but how they were drawn. Different ethnic groups, religious communities, and tribal identities were forced into the same countries, often with long histories of tension between them. Imagine taking completely different states with conflicting identities and combining them overnight, expecting everything to function smoothly. It wouldn't work, and it didn't. These artificial borders created deep-rooted tensions that still exist today. And here's the part that changes how you see everything. Many conflicts we call modern are actually echoes of decisions made more than a century ago. Now here's where the story takes a dramatic turn. Number 6 is about oil, and this is where everything shifts from regional politics to global importance. Before oil was discovered, the Middle East was not the center of world attention. But once vast oil reserves were found, everything changed. Countries like Saudi Arabia, Iran, and Iraq suddenly became some of the most strategically important nations on Earth. And in a world that depends on energy, that kind of importance attracts global involvement almost instantly. Power was no longer just about land or population, it became about resources. And oil quickly became the most valuable resource of all. But here's the twist that most people overlook. It's not just about oil, it's about how that oil moves. Around 20% of the world's oil passes through the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow waterway that acts like a pressure point for the entire global economy. If anything disrupts that route, the effects are immediate. Gas prices rise, shipping slows down, and markets react within hours. And suddenly, something happening thousands of miles away starts affecting everyday life. That's why conflicts in this region are never just local, they're global. And this is exactly why even small tensions in the region can create massive global reactions. The world is more connected to this region than most people realize. Now let's move to number 5, and this is where things get darker. One of the deadliest wars in modern history is also one of the least talked about. The Iran-Iraq War lasted 8 years and resulted in hundreds of thousands, possibly up to 1 million deaths. Let that sink in for a moment. 8 years of continuous conflict. That's not just a war, that's an entire generation shaped by violence. And yet, it rarely gets the same attention as other global conflicts. The scale of destruction was enormous, but its memory often fades in global discussions. And that's what makes it even more shocking. What makes this war even more shocking is how it was fought. Trench warfare returned, something many associate only with World War I. Chemical weapons were used, cities were attacked, and civilians were caught in the middle. But here's where it becomes even more complex. This wasn't just a two-country war. Global powers were involved behind the scenes, supporting different sides at different times. So while it appeared to be a regional conflict, it was actually part of a much larger geopolitical struggle. And once again, the pattern becomes clear: these wars are never as isolated as they seem. The involvement of outside powers added layers of complexity that are still felt today. And it proved that regional conflicts can quickly become global concerns. Number 4 shows how quickly war can evolve. The Gulf War demonstrated how modern technology changed the speed of warfare. When Iraq invaded Kuwait, a US-led coalition responded with overwhelming force. After weeks of airstrikes, the ground war lasted just about 100 hours. That's barely 4 days. For a conflict of that scale, it was incredibly fast. But speed does not mean simplicity, and this is where the story takes another turn. The world witnessed how advanced military power could end conflicts quickly, but it also revealed the hidden costs that follow. As Iraqi forces retreated, they set hundreds of Kuwaiti oil wells on fire. The result was one of the worst environmental disasters in modern history. Thick black smoke covered the sky, and millions of barrels of oil were lost. This wasn't just a military conflict anymore, it became an environmental and economic crisis. And here's the key takeaway. Even short wars can leave damage that lasts for years, sometimes decades. This is where you start to see how the consequences of war extend far beyond the battlefield. The environmental impact alone took years to recover from. And it served as a reminder that war can damage more than just infrastructure, it can damage entire ecosystems. Now we reach number 3, and this is where everything becomes even more complicated. In 2003, the United States launched the Iraq War with the goal of removing Saddam Hussein and eliminating weapons of mass destruction. But those weapons were never found. And what followed was not stability, but chaos. And this is where one decision begins to reshape an entire region. What was expected to be a quick resolution turned into long-term instability. And the consequences were far greater than initially predicted. When a government collapses without a stable replacement, a power vacuum forms. Different groups compete for control, and conflict spreads quickly. That is exactly what happened in Iraq. Violence increased, insurgencies grew, and the situation became increasingly unstable. And here's the part most people don't realize. This instability didn't stay contained. It created the conditions for something even more dangerous to emerge. And this is where the story takes its darkest turn. The ripple effects spread far beyond Iraq's borders. And the region entered a new phase of uncertainty that would shape future conflicts. Number 2 brings us to the rise of ISIS, one of the most dangerous militant organizations in recent history. At its peak, ISIS controlled large areas of Iraq and Syria and declared a so-called caliphate. This was not just a small group operating in the shadows. It functioned like a state, controlling territory, resources, and populations. And it grew at a speed that shocked the world. And it forced multiple countries to respond. But here's the key point that changes everything. ISIS did not appear out of nowhere. It was the result of years of instability, conflict, and power struggles. When systems break down, something always fills the gap. And in this case, the result was a global threat. What made ISIS even more dangerous was how it used modern technology. Social media allowed it to recruit internationally, spread propaganda, and expand its influence far beyond the region. Now we arrive at number 1, and this is the most important truth of all. These wars are not distant events. They affect the entire world, including you. And this is where everything connects. When conflict disrupts oil supply, fuel prices rise. When instability increases, financial markets react. When millions of people are displaced, migration patterns change and international policies shift. These are not isolated events, they are part of a global system. And here's the realization that changes how you see everything. These conflicts are not random. They are connected. A chain reaction that began over a century ago continues to shape the present. These wars are not just about history. They are shaping the world you live in right now, and they will continue to influence the future. So the next time you hear about a conflict in the Middle East, remember, this isn't just news, it's history still unfolding, and it's shaping your world more than you think. If you want to truly understand how global power, history, and real-world events connect, you're in the right place. If you want to be smarter every day, like and subscribe.